today, because doing something like this is kind of like a World Series for me. It may seem small, but this is a really big moment for myself. So my name's Francis Catalano. I'm a recovering addict of nearly about 20 years, convicted felon. I also like to add to that stuff. Now I'm a small business owner, a member of the Knights of Columbus Church Group, productive member of my community, mentor young kids, try to do as much as I can, and really turned everything around. Do you know an addict or criminal that has totally reinvented themselves? Today, you will meet one. 70% of inmates return to jail or prison within the first 3 years of release. Many within the first few months or even days. Many relapse and die on drugs and never get a chance to show their real potential. Many addicts go back to using almost instantly. Today I will share my story of addiction and crime, trauma and tragedy, and how I turned that into a life of purpose, blessings, and triumph. At the early age of maybe about 10 years old or so, I began experimenting with alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and also breaking rules. I was a quiet, shy kid, both parents very loving and involved in my life. I come from a small town with very little to do. As I entered junior high, I was in a new town, new friends, and different opportunities. I was also introduced to some other things, painkillers. They gave me a feeling of escape, and that quiet, shy kid fell in love with that. During high school, my habit continued to grow. Parties, wrong crowds, then hard drugs. At the age of about 15 was the first time I had tried heroin. I graduated high school with no plans of college, basically just to party. I also committed my first crime right out of high school. I got in a very bad DUI accident. I had pulled out in front of a coal bucket truck and I was T-boned. Luckily, minutes before I'd let the passenger out, or they would have more than likely been killed. After that, I then got a construction job. I'd even been a part of the laborers union for almost 10 years, and now I had a daily habit. Dodging drug tests, tampering with urine samples. Another accident had occurred. I was developing a habit of hurting other people. The addiction reaches much, much more than just the individual. This time I was driving the Class B truck, pulled out of an intersection, and a civilian I had pulled right out in front of her. I ran to the car and looked inside. The woman was barely hanging on. But once again, I would get lucky. She did survive. I even tried to blame the accident on the woman. Into my mid-20s, I had been doing the construction for about 8 years and had about 10 years of addiction under my belt. I couldn't do without them. I began selling the drugs on the side to fuel my habit. Again, this job I had got fired, risking others yet another time. At this same construction job one morning, I was flagging traffic on a very busy highway. I had fell asleep at my post. I'd let traffic flow into an oncoming lane and put a lot of people and coworkers at risk. My boss had come to my post. They knew something was going on. I was instantly terminated from another position. I had made it back home. Once again, out on my butt, I had to find work to support my habit. So I asked my father, could he get me a job with him? He accepted, and I had stayed there a few years working with him, but I was barely hanging on. I was looking very rough, having to wear long sleeve shirts in the middle of summer to hide all my track marks. I was even using on the job. I was requested a random drug screen and refused. I was very embarrassed of that, especially working for my father. So I denied it. I was terminated from that position as well. Without work, I came up with a new tactic. I was getting desperate. I decided to start committing robberies and burglaries. Everything from entering homes, even one time during a Christmas, I can remember stealing the presents from under the tree. I would take things from work companies, chainsaws, hunting equipment, and also any prescription drugs in your home were at risk of me coming and taking them. I would pawn things, anything I could sell. I even started taking from my loved ones, reaching right into my mother's purse, stealing from my uncle's wallet. I was becoming a master manipulator. I was not welcome anymore around any of my family. My bridges had been burned. I had lost my apartment, was behind on rent, but crime was my new way of life. Now I would become homeless. I spent quite a bit of time in and out of multiple county jails, Jefferson, Clearfield, Allegheny, and even a short stay in Indiana County. My addiction was in full control of my life. Then in 2016, I encountered one of my worst days. My father had passed. He had suffered a major heart attack. I had lost my best friend, and he always helped me. No matter what I did, he always had my back. I decided then to throw in the towel and give up. The year after his death, I overdosed 5 times, accumulated more criminal charges. I was in jail yet for another stay. This time about 7 months, and I had my first felony conviction. I did my time, sobered up a bit, got a job at the lumber yard right here in town, and then into the oil fields I went. I was making good money, had a new apartment, but nothing changed. I was still using. I was hiding the pain. I also began moving quite a bit of heroin at the time. My mind was still closed off that I had other options. I had become the drug dealer that I once thought was cool. I then started to notice a police presence everywhere I went. I thought, that won't happen to me. This is just a coincidence. That won't happen. I was wrong again. I was kicked out of a new apartment for causing disturbances and having addicts and users coming in and out at all times of the night. So I moved in with a friend and also a partner in crime. One Saturday morning, I'd heard a knock at the door. I peeked out the window. It was the drug task force. The house was surrounded. I scrambled to hide the drugs, even stashing 200 bags of heroin only feet away from a 3-month-old infant. I knew it was time to man up, and I really did want to change. That evening, after the police had left, my addiction took control again. I had got sick because they had taken all my drugs. At the time, they didn't have enough evidence to take me in that day, and the police said the hammer would drop. It was just a matter of time. So I signed a statement to get out of going to court that day. I had got sick that afternoon and decided to go on the run and leave town. After a month on the run, living in very hard conditions, the police had tracked me down. I'd almost felt relieved and saved, and I would have the opportunity to see my family again. 9 months awaiting sentencing, I had been sentenced to a rehab. I had my mind somewhat straight, but would face another test. Before completion of that rehab, on my very last day, I was on day number 89 of a 90-day program. I was called to the office in the evening, and I knew something didn't feel right. As I looked in the window, it was my probation officer. I knew breaking those rules and causing all the trouble in rehab, abusing my medications, caught up to me. I was denied completion in order to be resentenced again. The hardest phone call I ever made was that morning when my mom was supposed to come pick me up at 10 a.m. the next day, and I had to call and say, well, I did it again. This time, I'm going away for a long time. I was resentenced to the SIP program with 3 years probation following. I was heartbroken. I had failed again, and I almost accepted that this would be my way of life, in and out of jail. I would now see what state prison was like. I was terrified, alone. I had to learn to depend on myself. In prison, I had met a mentor. I began to develop a new routine, and exercise became a new way of life for me. I started to develop great self-discipline. I had found my new calling. I began to believe in myself. Always showing up during these workouts in the prison yard, this is what gave me my confidence. I would notice a lot of men would come and give up within days, but I stayed. They were bigger, stronger, but I had more will. I noticed I would not give up when others would. They would come and go, and I would stay. If I could do this, I could do anything. I even began training other inmates. I could now lead. Upon release of the SIP program, I was saying goodbye to my mentors and friends. One of them even mentioned, "Francis, maybe you could do something like this when you got home." I didn't even know a career like that existed, of being a personal trainer. I thought to myself, maybe you could do something like this. And I also said, what if? What if I could pull this off? My mind was now in go mode, and I was starting to be a believer. It is possible. After release, I completed another 3 months in the reentry rehab in Pittsburgh. I got a home plan. I would have a new beginning and a fresh start. As soon as I got out, COVID hit. This was not part of my plan to recovery. I had to adapt and adapt fast. My sobriety was a great risk. I started falling behind before I ever had a chance to start. I could not find work due to my criminal history. I tried everywhere, tons and tons of applications. It also made me feel very unwanted when you try that hard and no one's willing to give you a shot. Businesses were closing. I was worried I would not make it and go back to my old ways. I needed a job or I was at risk of losing my home plan and being sent to the halfway house. After months of trying, I was finally given hope. One morning in an empty parking lot during COVID, I was exercising by myself and I got the phone call. It was like a gift from heaven. I can remember that day very clearly. It was a local hardware store and they were willing to give me a shot. Just let me be a salesman on the floor. I really broke down that day. I had felt such relief that I had now the stepping stone to get where I wanted to go. This would then fund my dream of becoming a personal trainer. I got my bills paid up, purchased a course on becoming certified professional trainer. I began working with family and friends to see if I could do it in my spare time. Life was looking up. I was now setting goals, gaining ground. An old friend approached me with a construction job offer. I would be making more money and working less hours. I knew this would get me to the next step where I needed to go. I needed to save to take the plunge. After a year on that job, I made the decision and said to myself, you can do this. Look what you've been through. This is absolutely nothing. The way I used to live is what's hard. I also started to think to myself, you're starting to change. That winter work slowed down, and that was my shot. I'd been working with a handful of clients before and after work, even on the weekends. I found something I was good at. As I gained confidence, I felt joy like never before. New doors were opening, new opportunities. My hard work and dedication was paying off. I wasn't scared anymore. I quit my construction job and found a space I could operate out of. I took what savings I had and went all in. I had been working with a mentor from the SBDC, learning how to start a business. And in February of 2022, I opened my own small business, Back to Basics Fitness. I also have been doing fitness classes for the past almost 3 years. This will be my 3rd year in business. One other thing before I forget, April 17th this year will be my 6-year sobriety mark coming up. I just didn't want to forget that. Now I work for myself and help others through what I love, exercising. Working out has taught me so much and helped me grow physically and mentally. Hard work works. Overcoming adversity is something now I run towards, not away from. I'm a believer it is possible. I now have the tools to live a productive life. I completed all my outpatient programs and continue to work with a drug and alcohol therapist. Maintained paying all my fines. Everything is up to date and going well. I completed probation less than a month ago. I thank the judge on that last court visit. I believe you were there, and it felt so cool to see the change that had happened, because when he had sentenced me, I was angry, I was mad, I was blaming him, I begged for another chance, but thank God he did not give me another chance, because I was, at risk. That's why I was thankful they resentenced me, because somebody seen something and said, if this guy goes home, he's probably not gonna make it. I can for the first time say I'm proud of myself. My family relationships are better than ever. I've gathered so much community support as they embrace my story. Last year I completed a project at Harmon Field through donations I had gathered from the community and built an exercise area in our park. Doing things I had never thought possible, including like what I'm doing today. I'm a church group member, a member of the Knights of Columbus. I help out at the SSCD school and church. My life has been the perfect training ground, defying the odds and overcoming massive adversity. Setting an example and giving hope to those just like myself. Reinventing myself has given me a new way of life and perseverance to make my dreams come true. Not end up another statistic of addiction and crime. When life knocks you down, keep pushing, never give up. Change is possible. I just proved it. The path I had taken can now be used to help others understand that the past can look way different than your future. Life is precious and you only get one shot. Every day is a blessing and an opportunity to make a change for the better. In closing, if you know someone struggling from addiction and crime, tell them my story of change. If I can do it, so can they. Thank you, everyone, for letting me share my story today. I'm very honored for this opportunity. Thanks again. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you.